the answers are inside. Yeah, I am the 21st century superhuman. Now is the time. Come on everyone, let's celebrate. We are the children of the sun. I can see you when I look into your eyes. We are the same, we are light, yeah, we are one. Here now, hear my ancient prayer and sing along. We are awakening as one. And we can make a difference. Yeah, we can be the change it takes to make the world.
Hi there, I'm Carrie Ellis, author of 21st Century Superhuman. This is our 21st Century Superhuman show, and today I am with you with Wayne Wangler. Wayne, how are you today?
Excellent, as always.
You and I have had some very interesting conversations lately, and we are going to let our listening audience in on a few of those, and some of those have to do with the cause of disease and illness and what gets us separated from the truth of our being and how plasma can actually bring us back in harmony with this. So I'm excited to have this conversation. How about you?
Well, we may get out of the box a fair bit here today, but if we start looking at our planet, there's a lot of things that aren't going so well. So there are a lot of questions that need to be asked and answers that are not within the current paradigm. So maybe what we're presenting as just a philosophy, some of it, but it has as much validity as a lot of other things that are being looked at out there.
Yes, I really like that. Very cool. It's always good just to have thought-provoking conversations and bring forward ideas that might not be commonly talked about in the general public to help us activate more of our brain cells and think in new ways. So I actually initially met you in the premiere bringing forward to the public this beautiful device that you now call Miracle in Yelm, Washington. Whitney and I were traveling out there teaching workshops, plasma energy workshops in 2016. And you had been working for a year on this device. And you kind of promised us that if you could get it done, you would bring it to our workshop. And how exciting that we all got to be some of the first people to sit in Miracle. So tell us a little bit about her and how you came into this creation process.
It's not a her, it's an it, because it's
androgynous. Androgynous, her, him, it, yes.
Well, the concept of plasma I was aware of a long time ago, just because of the fact that it's an energy that exists from my understanding. And I should qualify that anything I'm putting out here is just Wayne's philosophy. And I just said, I'm just a farm kid that's good with a chainsaw, so it doesn't mean anything really. But there's been a lot of accumulation in my life as knowledge and perspective, a long journey of understanding mind, which has led me into some very interesting observations and experiences. So it's just me sharing that. The concept, when this was introduced from the Keshe Foundation, of the fact that there was a way of bringing this plasmatic field down into a usable form, intrigued me. And of course, I was been enamored for many years with Tesla's work and tinkered around with that a little bit. So it really fit right in very well with sort of my philosophy and curiosities of how things can be improved. And the miracle, its primary function in the beginning was to assist the ability for human beings to improve quality of life, to come into a more balanced state.
And Wayne, having known you for the last year and a half since Miracle came forward, and you were building it before that, you have grown more youthful. And we did a show on that, of how your telomeres have increased through literal medical tests, and the radiance on your skin, your face, your presence has greatly shifted in the last year and a half.
Yes, I'm still working on the good looking part though.
So you have the wonderful opportunity of having Miracle in your home and another one in your office. So
Yes.
You're getting to live in this field all the time.
I would not want to live without it in my life anymore.
Isn't that amazing?
In me, from all aspects, has been monumental in the physiology, the emotional, mindful, because there was aspects of this has been an ongoing experiment for a year now to really start to understand what was this apparatus capable of.
Yes, and it's built according to sacred geometry dimensions, which we'll look at in just a second. When I sat in it for the first time, I told you I felt like I was in a Stargate. That's what I called it. And I still do. You actually have gatherings once a week where people can be online with you and can connect with Miracle if they're not on location where they could come to your office. So it's an amazing thing to just sit in a living field of intention with Miracle and even receive from a distance, which I absolutely love.
Yes, and that comes from the understanding that mind is non-local, that we can go ahead and back in time and in distance in time and receive interaction. So that's why that concept came about. And understanding that there's so many people that just don't have access to come to the office because of location, because of disabilities, that it allowed them a venue to just come and participate. So we do, so far it's been usually Saturdays, we do a live Zoom meeting and we do a half an hour focus together, and Wayne does a few words of his wisdom or perspective, and we engage it with every individual's own desire on what they want to change in their life. And one of the things we've understand is that Miracle is acting like an amplifier or a conduit or an antenna that really does amplify intention.
Very good. And we'll put your website under this video, and we'll have a slide in just a few minutes that show where they can jump on that every week if they would like to. So tell us a little bit, this was kind of your beginning experiments.
Well, it was kind of a big unknown, because in the beginning when we were working with the coils, which are an integral part of all of this, we had only had coils up to 10 inches long. So yes, I wanted to build the full size one I could go into, or we could go into. And I still say I built this for myself, and everybody else gets to enjoy the benefits. But I started off doing a small prototype to see if I could physically handle the coils, how I could work with something that was 5 feet long, and then what would the results be from the field. And when we were done, the coherence, the velvety nature of this field, and I say a lot of that is because of the geometry and some of the additional plasmas I've coated the coils with, is resulting in this huge coherence. And this was an example of Belinda was my partner at the time, and she had had a broken ankle years before, still has plates and or pins and screws in there. And this would greatly relieve the condition after being very active for a day. And in 2 days initially, she was suffering somewhat, and in 2 days it basically normalized the condition in her.
So Wayne, even though we've done some of these videos before, let's just mention really quickly, you were a student of the Keshe plasma teachings, and these are Keshe, kind of from the school of thought of the Keshe plasma teachings, magnetic gravitational coils. And could you just share a little bit about how you were a student and came to this idea?
Well, I was aware of the Keshe Foundation for many years, but never enough substance to get me to really turn my head until Mr. Keshe did a talk to the ambassadors of the world and laid out his view of what he wanted to accomplish. And I said, well, this is big enough that I'm in for a test run to see if it's for real. And when he started the public teachings, there was several of us in the community, which we didn't know at the time, but we of course gravitated together and we studied all the teachings, everyone, every day.
Nice.
For a year. So it was such a fundamental learning and understanding that we gained from the beginning, which allowed us then to take that and expand in our own way as to what could be accomplished with this technology.
Very good. And then you had heard a comment that Mr. Keshe said that if you could make a coil, a Magrav, magnetic gravitational coil set big enough to get inside, you could literally heal anything.
That was his comment, yeah. Oh, just
Yes.
A one-line statement, and that was enough to...
I remember being in that teaching and hearing it, yes. So making those coils, those big coils, to make something big enough as Miracle, this is kind of your winding rod that you wound them on, right?
This whole thing was quite an exploration in figuring something out, which my farming background became so valuable to me, because there you learn how to do anything on your own pretty much, and my construction background. So yeah, we're talking about a coil here that's over 19 feet long and has over 1,000 feet of wire in it. So it was quite a challenge. And a light 14 gauge wire, which is very fragile when you start dealing with the weight and the size of all these coils. And so there was a lot of going backwards and figuring out and learning to be even and just allowing the answers to come, which was a lot of how I have accomplished what I have done, is allowing that greater mind to show up by me getting out of the way and just let it give me the answers to what to do.
So this is one of your quote unquote mistakes in the learning curve, and but you just continued on, which is awesome.
And the table's all wet. It's not because I cried that much. It was just a rainy, or I had washed the coils off, but just the journey. And of course, finally, I figured out a way of handling them. And this is just a picture of the coils that have been nano-coated. And that means that we've created thousands of layers of nano-coated particles that are adhering to the copper wiring. And that's what's pulling the plasma field in, for those that don't understand.
Thank you. Very good.
So I worked on no, go ahead, Carrie, or you want me to just?
No, I was just going to say, so there's so many parts to this, and I appreciate you mentioning the nano coating on the copper, which is that black coating. And then you're also going to go into talking about making GANs, because then you use GANs in the process as well. And GANs means gas in its nano state. So there's certain methodologies through which we're taking little electrodes and salt water and various pieces of metal, and we're making, again, a nanomaterial out of them, which is like the atoms and the molecules are in a very expanded state, so that they, again, have the capability of pulling in and carrying a plasmatic field.
Yes. And so what we're doing in this case here, I understood the value of gold relevance to its frequency and its ability to improve the human body. That was my perspective on this. So I went about, initially I was wanting to see if I could create just a gold GANs or plasma. And because of what I put together here, which was interesting because it was a gold coin, yes, but I had some dead seawater and something just, that knowingness of just going ahead and using something unique. So I used that in here. And this is the result of, after 2 months, roughly, that these aminos started forming on the top, or this is what we had after 2 months. And this was not a lot, but it is more precious to me than gold itself, actually, because of the adventure and the ability to accomplish making it.
And so you used this GANs and other GANSs. Did you coat your coils with it, or?
Yes. The gravitational, which is the horizontal ring, has a specific set different from the vertical ring, which is the magnetical, because what I'm wanting to do is create a field difference.
Right.
But so this is a picture showing, and this is really very powerful if you understand what's going on here, because you have a substance, and what this is the blend of different plasmas that I use to coat the magnetical. And the dark stuff here is mainly the gold that's showing up, but it's the tub that I dip the coils in. It's kind of like bathing a baby is how I do it. And you can see the field interaction that's going on below. And I can shake this tub up and that field will start to regenerate and form itself again, very similar to iron filings being influenced from a magnet. There's a field that's being generated. So that's proof that there's something is here. And then the little white dish is just floating on top. And what was unique to me is that it actually formed the golden mean.
So is this the actual container you would dip the coils in?
Yeah, the bigger one below is the larger container.
Okay, nice. And are they in it right with this picture, or no?
No, that's just empty, the tub with the solution in it.
Okay, very cool. Amazing, beautiful. And there's even a lot of light in this picture as well.
Some of the configurations that show up is really quite beautiful and amazing, but this one in particular because of that shape.
Yes, and we also feel that plasma helps bring light into the body and into our field and restore it maybe where it isn't where it should be anymore.
Yeah, we're going to get into that one.
Yes.
And this is another one that should be intriguing scientists, because, and there's very, very few people that come into Miracle and usually even into the office that do not feel that field that's emanating off of Miracle. So it's not just within the unit that it exists, it's it's far beyond that. And we actually had one individual, because we have one at the house, that didn't know us, drove up the driveway one day, and when they come in the house and understood what they were doing, what we were doing, they said, I felt the field when I turned off of the main road. That's 200 feet away. But what's unique about this, it's not plugged into the wall, so there's no DC or no AC power. There's no batteries. There's no DC power. There's no external source of energy.
But you call these batteries, and these are based on Alex's beads, which are something that came out from one of the students in the Keshe plasma teachings. And each one of those little blue sections has 4 strips within it, right?
Correct.
And then you have special things that you've added to these, to the some of the layers underneath.
Yeah, I pulverized crystal because I want just understanding the ability of what crystal can do. So that's added into the different plasmas that are wrapped in. And it actually wasn't Alex's beads. These were Alex's plasma battery design.
Okay.
But I've just modified some and made it a little bit more streamlined.
Great. And these were in the first picture that I was sitting in the in Miracle. When you first brought it forward, it only had this many batteries, but now you have about a dozen of these, right? And
it only had 4 each of the little blue clusters has 4 batteries, or what I call plasma coil packs. And the original Miracle, I only had 4 made at the time.
Wow.
Knowing this has led me to put 12 at home, and for experimenting, I put 16 at the office, and you could just feel the volume of the field increase once I did that.
Interesting. Very cool. And here's the beautiful Miracle that we get to sit with every week and feel the transmission from a distance. And you can see the big coil ring all the way around the outside. And then there's another one that's perpendicular. And those are each double coils. Is that right? You have one coil inside the other?
Has to be. It's
to
the
be.
reverse spinning of the field that is creating. It's a big portion to this, and I really think for someone that could see this field, and some people have seen it in different ways, that it is toroidal in nature. I really suspect it is.
And then you have the little Miracle sitting inside the big Miracle.
No, we're just playing around and seeing what happens, because it is a big experiment, and it's going to be for years.
Right.
Gathering knowledge and understanding how we can perfect and improve on everything.
I can't help but wonder, Wayne, when I knowing Miracle and knowing what I know of the beautiful energy that gets generated with this design based in the magnetic gravitational fields and also based in sacred geometry, what if there were a dozen of these around the planet, situated in, or what if there was one in each country? I just think we would be creating a really beautiful, grid of the highest frequency, kind of based in love, based in the proper dimensions of human expression.
Yeah, and this is where I'll comment on that, but giving a little background first. There is 3 aspects of what we have found with Miracle, and one is the physiology of what it can do to the body. Number 2 is the emotional state that it can balance out in the body. But the third one was what it's doing to our brain. And we had one person coming in that was very psychic very early on, loved the field. And one day she gets in Miracle and she connected mindfully to what she termed Mother God. And everybody's familiar with Abraham Hicks. It was a very similar interaction. And it was so beautiful because over time I've been able to go in and we've recorded, and it helped us understand the parameters of what I've actually created here. And one of the important parts was relevant to mind, that it starts to unite the neocortex, the midbrain, and the lower cerebellum, which is going to bring around about the unified brain, which is Carrie's 21st superhuman.
21st century superhuman, yeah.
Because that's what allows the extraordinary, the deeper mind, the greater self to really come through. And for me, what I've observed is knowingness, answers. It's starting to flow sometimes really, I'm not sure what word you'd use, but just so beautifully, so succinctly, so outrageous in how the information is coming to me. So there was that part. And then they also shared, there's a lot of information that was shared, but one other thing was that these units would start to interface. So that's the confidence we're talking about.
I get chills just hearing you say that.
Yeah.
So, Wayne, just without going into too much detail, do you want to share a few just experiences that have happened with people that have been connected with Miracle?
It's been a big learning curve, and I have to qualify this statement first, and that after one of the things that came out of one of the channelings was that it was so imperative that we educate the people that were coming into Miracle, their mindful intention and how that was going to impact it. Because there again, it's acting like an amplifier.
Right.
In the beginning, we didn't, I mean, I understood mine, but not being aware that someone would come into Miracle and have fear, for example. And that was happening. And of course, that would just throw these people into a whole meltdown for 2 or 3 days.
Mm,
So that was clarity that came out of one of the valuable parts from the channeling. So anybody that gets into Miracle now, they're sat down in a chair and they are educated as to their participation in this. So the experience of it have been full spectrum because of them being the observer effect, or being the result of the observer effect and what it can accomplish. So we went slow in the beginning because we didn't know. We didn't open the door very wide because we wanted documented evidence. So we can say now that we have MRIs, CT scans that are showing cancer in remission, that is showing glaucoma levels back in normalcy. We had one lady whose huge benign tumor went down 47% in a couple months.
wow.
Blood sugar levels back in normal from diabetes. So very broad spectrum of improvements in the body.
Haven't you even had doggies sit in there and
Yes, we had one dog that had congestive heart failure that after a while, the owner took it back to the vet and said it's normal, but they wouldn't give us a report saying that. It's a little bit
right, too
too
out
much.
there?
Yes. So
Yeah.
we've had that. I have a picture of our chicken, one of our chicks that had a broken leg because a block fell on it, and we had it in Miracle. And normally I would have just hit it on the head and said, tough luck, but we've actually nursed it back and it's doing fine.
Nice.
Its life is back there.
So,
So
and to say, if a person is really ill, they need to go see their doctor. Um, you are not claiming anything. However, people by coming in, making their own choice to be with Miracle, and choosing their own wellness, there's an amplification process that happens.
it absolutely is. And in my perspective, and we call it plasma balancing, because when you put the body back in a normal, balanced state, the body can heal itself. So, and if you talk about someone with a split personality, that's to me an observation that says the body can shift that fast in physiology, because in one mindset you have blue eyes, the next one you have brown eyes, the one mindset you have a scar and the other one not. The one you smoke, the other one you do not, as an example. So there's a lot of changes that can happen in a very short term. And more recently, on a couple other aspects of what we've accomplished physiologically, is we've had one fella come in with neuropathy in one 10-minute session, and he said it's gone. A fella that had severe varicose veins, and he went home an hour later and he said they were 50% gone, and 2 days later they were 90% gone. That is extreme of the extraordinary, but these are people coming in that are absolutely open and allowing to the changes that could go on in the body in a very short term time frame.
Well, I think it's very interesting how stuck we can get in our patterns of belief about our unwellness or what's wrong with us. And one of the things I've learned, I mean, we healed a broken arm that I had back in the early 80s with a system called body electronics. And it was about just bringing ourselves back up through the layers of where we had shut ourselves off through anger, through pain, through sadness, through sorrow. And bringing ourselves back up to love, going through all those layers. And literally, I had a broken arm. Doctors wanted to do surgery and put 2 pins in, and it was well in 3 hours. It was completely healed. Muscles that were black and blue were back up in place. We literally heard the bones clicking back into place. So I learned long ago that this world we're living in is only it's very malleable. But what has to shift is our belief system, our focus, our consciousness, and then put ourselves in a field that can support us in that change.
And that focus part is, well, it's all of it. It is that belief, the acceptance, of which I keep hammering on the people at MindMeld, because I want to get them in that state of acceptance so the extraordinary can happen. And that's why we do what we call caring and sharing, so that we can share our experiences that build up that acceptance.
Right.
And that's a perfect example what you had of when you really line up. And we talk about how critical it is that you have to line up to that observer first, to that greater aspect of yourself. Because, and I tell the story how I grew my squash thumbnail back, and the thumb back that was totally messed up. I had no nail bed. And what I did is I just reached kind of what you did in that same state of focus, but in a very casual way, but still absolutely accepting of the possibility, and pure focus. And the thumbs just started growing back 3 days later.
Nice.
So it's possible. There's
Well,
enough.
if somebody wants to join you in Sitting with Miracle 1 day a week, right now you guys are doing it, they can go to Plasma Balancing Systems LLC.com, Plasma Balancing Systems LLC.com, and there's a link there, right, to sign up with Miracle?
We call it MindMeld with Miracle, after Dr. Spock's capability on Star Trek.
Great.
In the mind, and it's all available there.
Nice. And you also have some other things available at your website, which they would be going to look for Miracle. Let's just talk through some of these really quickly, because we have a lot of people who've been playing with plasma energy out in the field, who've been making GANs, making health pens, and you can show us here a few more sophisticated items that someone could make. And really, one of the purposes, people can order things from you, although doing a lot of production is not the main focus of your life, and you'd like to inspire other people to also create their own wellness devices.
Absolutely. When you can do that, you're free and you're independent in many things in life. And maybe for someone who is more unfamiliar with what we're talking about today, the concept that we can take and put many different, just about any substance as we grow in this understanding, and put it in a plasmatic state, and then just consume the water, or even put that frequency embedded water on the body with different aspects of what we want to accomplish, has tremendous benefits to the human body, because it's being understood more that the skin is plasmatic, that the digestive system has a plasmatic nature to it. And we sort of duplicate that in how we produce some of the plasmas. So
when you say a plasmatic nature, tell us again what you feel that means.
Well, if what we're doing is we're taking the signature, the frequency signature of any substance, let's say calcium. And when we sort of break it down, we change the matter state into a more frequency emitting state, for lack of a better way of putting that.
And we do that by literally moving the atoms or molecules further apart, so that they can receive the plasmatic field, which you mentioned earlier in a conversation today, that the plasma was beyond gamma rays, and which are some of the bursts that we get from our galaxy, actually. So you're talking about a very high frequency type of energy, but by creating these plasmatic tools, we are pulling that in. We're creating a carrier that can create amplification of our life field.
Correct. But that can apply to just about any substance.
Yes.
It changes its nature in that regard.
Yes. And so that's what we are making into these Gansas and various nano-coated objects. We're using the plasma making process to do that. And then what have you added to this cup of life?
Well, the list is getting so long now, but there's probably in its main constituents about 10 different plasmas in there, some of the fundamental ones in the beginning. But I've been working on a lot of specialty stuff, which has included things like the calcium magnesium, frankincense, myrrh, and turmeric, boron, because it's so important to the body, some of the immune system stuff like silver, gold, and some of it is plasmatic in nature, the actual plasmas, but some of it, because it's so rare in what I have for a volume to use, then I just use the water. For example, the water of the amino acids of gold.
Right.
But I don't have enough to spread that around. So
right. So Wayne, if you you had mentioned that you use the method of using hydrochloric acid to break your substance down and then following it with caustic, so that you're really doing an acid-based process, which is creating this amplification of the material. How long do you leave it in the acid?
It varies. A lot of this has been just knowingness with me because I have no parameters, and it depends on the different substances I'm working with.
Right.
For
So
example,
maybe a range.
for example, when I was working with some of the rock substances for the fertilizer, they would sit in there for a week or two at least,
Okay.
because I'm allowing that acid, and it was constantly, I mix it daily or many times during the day to allow that acid to break that down as much as possible. And as an example to that, the rock phosphate in the commercial fertilizer industry, they add acid to that to allow it to break down so it's more usable in a one
Interesting.
protocol for the plants.
Interesting.
And that, of course, is a huge issue because now you're starting to change the pH of the soil, and that's a concern in
Right.
agriculture.
And then sitting in the caustic on the converse, how long that? So it might be anywhere from a couple days to a couple weeks,
Yeah,
depending on the substance.
yeah. And then actually, I save all my used caustic from when I'm nano coating my plates, and
Uh-huh.
that is just slowly added to that
Mm-hmm.
to bring that back into a position that I'm comfortable. It's neutral, and I do that all outside because the gases coming off of that is not very friendly to the body.
Right.
And at that point, everything's rinsed in CO2 water just to introduce more of that plasmatic water into it.
Nice. I know other people that are doing multiple, additions of the plasma water and amplifying upon amplification, and it's creating really great fields. So you have nano-coated copper screen in here, right?
A mesh on that, yeah.
Copper mesh. And then you've added the plasma waters to the
So it's a double
cup.
wall cup that I cut open and add everything in there and then reseal it back up.
And then, so those are in the sealed area, and then a person would add their water into the inside of it, and it would potentize that water without without actually touching it.
Yeah. So
Because
it's
people
really,
write me and ask me, can I drink GANs? Should I drink GANs? And the answer is really no. GANs is not considered something we should consume. Some people have consumed the water off of it, but what's really better, because this is an area where we need to learn a new understanding. These plasmatic fields can literally permeate anything. So once we put them near our body, in a bottle, in an outer layer of a bottle, in an outer layer of a tube, we are literally permeating our bodies with those plasmatic fields.
yeah. And so, yes, err on the side of caution. So I say to consume,
Yes.
just don't do that.
Yeah.
There's too much chance of that field being so strong it's unbeneficial to your well-being.
And because you don't need to. So just err on the side of caution and use in the suggested devices, which are things like the cup of life and the pads,
And
etc.
even with all of that, with the water, we suggest to people to start with only 1 or 2 ounces a day, because just that water can be so impactful from a detoxing standpoint, or whatever the body has to do to start to readjust, to rebalance, that go at it slowly.
So you're saying the water that's been potentized in that cup, or the water that's been potentized by these bands of life, right?
Yep.
And so these bands of life, I actually have, I love them. And we just wrap one of them at a time around a 5-gallon jug of water. And that water is so sweet and it tastes so good. You know that those fields are being activated and changed by the nano-coated copper and the GANs that you have in these pads.
Yeah. It's interesting. Our animals get it. So we have the dogs inside, but I have 2 containers out for the chickens sometimes. And one of them has a balance pad or a plasma wrap around the outside, and the other one doesn't. And they'll always go to the one with the plasma water in it first.
Interesting. I can really tell when I don't have it. It's wonderful to have the water that's been potentized this way.
And we should understand that the one of the specific plasmas that is so beneficial that it's been proven is the CO2 plasma. And in tests to show what it does for the immune system is extraordinary. So when we're in times where the flu season and that is so out of control, I don't care what would environment you would put this body in right now, I don't think it's possible that I could have any issue with any disease whatsoever.
I agree. Same here. I've had the same experience. Seen people everywhere being sick this winter and just thought, wow, I'm not even being dented by this.
Yeah. And it's the emotional stability that comes back from being in Miracle and even with the water that's going in.
Right. And just the basic Gansas, even CO2, zinc, copper, and iron, you just even have those in your world. And there's a higher frequency body expression that starts taking place. And let's finish these up and then we'll talk about that in a minute, how it is that those plasmatic fields, what is the mechanics of that? How does it really change our state of well-being?
Well, part of it is understanding that we are plasmatic in nature. And if you look at the concept of the visible light spectrum, which is new to a lot of people, that if the plasma exists as source energy, point zero energy, and that's why we can't measure it yet, because at gamma, which is the next level down, we get into particle state. And all the other levels down through creation, which, you know, if you want to talk reference religion, you could talk about Jacob's ladder, that there are these levels that exist. So we are at the very bottom of this pyramid of frequency and atmospheres and energy levels. And if everything comes from that plasmatic nature initially, and we really introduce that life force back to this body, it's just going to benefit us because there is a love field to this. That's what Sue Ann calls energy.
Absolutely, yes.
Miracle. It's putting us in a natural state of beingness.
Yes. And what is that natural state of beingness?
No, you share because you've experienced this as much.
Well, what I've written in 21st Century Superhuman, and there's a lot of input that comes from these ancient manuscripts, and the ancients say we are living in what they called the shift of the ages because we have more light coming into the planet. We're beginning to realize through ancient teachings and quantum physics that our thoughts literally create in this reality. And the ancient Aramaic texts, and ancient Aramaic is the language Buddha, Zoroaster, and Yeshua all spoke, and it is a quantum language. The Khabouris manuscript, which is one of the oldest known documents stating this ancient Aramaic, says we are beings designed to operate in love. And when we are operating outside of love, all these other things come in: blame, fear, judgment, hostility, and control, and they block the life force. So we can really look around and say anything negative going on in our world, wars, destruction, damage to the environment, it is because part of us has chosen to live outside of love, and that's the kind of energy that's been mirrored into the world. And I know, Wayne, you had some thoughts on that too. Do you want to jump into that or go through some of these other things first?
We're going to that off, but one part I'll add into here is understanding that every emotion carries a frequency with it.
Yes.
Every thought that happens that we have an associative memory, that we have an emotional reaction, the body is making all the chemicals, all the amino acids that go into create peptides and polypeptides that then are disseminated to the body. So there's a huge, not just frequency impact on the body, but then the body's having to continually make these chemicals to support it. So it really does.
So right. Yes.
Break down our whole entire immune system. And some of the research going on this right now is quite amazing. And maybe I'll just add one more point here while I think of this. Some of the research with the Heart Math Institute is understanding now that you have to have this coherence that lines up all our chakras.
Yes.
Before you can really come into that state of balance.
Yes.
And that love, that calm, that peace. And my life has changed so much because of that influence from my desire to change and become greater, but also the benefit of having the plasma as part of my life now.
Absolutely. And you know, and what you're talking about, those negative chemicals in our body are produced by old negative emotions that are being carried around. And as soon as we can release and let all of those go, I get up in the morning now and I say, I'm a being of light designed to operate in love. That's how I'm going to flow through the world today. And that's my dedication and my commitment. And anytime somebody brings up, oh, what about this and what about that going on in the world, I say, I'm a being of light designed to operate in love. That is how I change the world. That's how I change myself. It's how I change my state of well-being.
And for me, the example that I use is living my life in the center of the magnet. that I'm not swinging out there in this polarity of good and bad all the time and taking sides and having opinions, as much as what I see the world has to seem to always fluctuate in. And I watch people get angry just to support their perspective on something, which is just an opinion. But what we do to ourselves from that mindset alone is amazing.
Right. And then, Wayne, what we were talking about a little earlier is that plasma, putting ourselves around these plasma tools, the GANs, the nano-coated copper, the devices such as Miracle, by amplifying our own plasmatic field, we are restoring that connection of light from our DNA. We're restoring the connection where it's been broken by the habits of lifetimes and generations.
Yeah. So, and I should mention, it's not just Miracle that's doing this. There are many people around the world that are making different apparatuses.
Yes.
And having amazing results. And so it's just, this was Wayne's baby that was what I've been told it was my job to build this. And there is a very unusual coherence that happens in this that helps to do that helps bring everything into that alignment. And sometimes it's not pretty, the emotional residue that it brings up. And we've seen stuff come up from people from past lives. And until we address these aspects of the bigger picture of who we are, we're never going to get to a total resolve or understanding of why the disease is so rampant in our society. And that, this brings us then into what we were discussing earlier on about some of these dynamics.
Right. Absolutely. So go ahead and let's just zip through the rest of these, Wayne, and maybe share a few closing thoughts. Combo pack balance pads. Coming back to the 3D realm here, these are just something that you guys put plasma water in, CO2 zinc.
There's some fundamental ones that we have out there, and this was the CO2 water or plasma water, and it has such a broad range benefit to the human body that it's sort of like the one pad does all sort of thing. And
yeah, clearing the nervous system, clearing the emotions, clearing pain. These are so valuable.
Accelerates healing. I've used them on my knee. Sometimes go to bed with them wrapped around my knee, which I kept damaging ligaments because Wayne doesn't know how to stand still for 10 minutes. So that has its benefit. And then I got into creating a lot of different specialties for a specific application. And this was the calcium magnesium. And this I made from goat whey. With the reason for that was that in the brain, there's a very specific calcium magnesium ratio. And I wanted it to have that in its construct, as well, of course, as how important the calcium and magnesium is to our joints and fundamental.
And so again, it's a GANs that you made out of this, and then it goes into the plastic part of the pad with a little cloth, and a person can lay it against their body, against their face, whatever, put it in their bed or pocket, and then the little cloth envelope that goes over it helps make it be more comfortable. But many of us use these pads all the time. I just had a friend who I gave several different GANs pads to that were just made with Ziplocs and paper towels, and then the plasma water inside. And I had her alternate them along the sides of her bed to create different fields. And she put a health pen at the top of the bed, put the pads along the side, and a bucket of salt water at the bottom to discharge the negative energies. And that bucket of water, salt water, literally in a couple of days turned black. So it's amazing how you get the energy fields of the body moving when you start putting these sort of plasma devices around you. And we'd like to encourage you also to make your own.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes some self-educating on all of this, and then we want to mention that there is a course now available.
Yes.
YouTube's from the Keshe Foundation to help with the fundamentals of learning.
Yes, understanding plasma science, and the Keshe Foundation YouTube channel is KFSSI, Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute, KFSSI, and that is their YouTube channel. And if you go there and you look for understanding plasma basics, you will find that set of 12 videos, which will be really helpful.
And I have to say, over my course now of 2 years or year and a half of observing so many things that were done improper from what I understand, and testing them and not feeling the feel off of them, take the time to learn and make sure you do it right by education, so that what you do is beneficial to you, but also it doesn't put a bad name on what we're doing, because one bad experience then closes the door for so many in the future to realize this potential.
Yes, learning how to do it right. And I'm working on putting some educational videos up at my website also, 21st Century Superhuman. So a lot of good info out there.
So this was our basically our very beginning fundamental design. It hasn't changed very much. We call it the blue tube. It has 4 coils in it, which for those that have worked with this, that is double what is quite often used to make the handheld device, or what was sometimes termed the pain pen. It carries a center wire that I figured out how to, 14 gauge, that I figured out how to split the top and configure it specific to give a balanced taking and giving perspective to that. And the experiences with this alone has been extraordinary.
Nice. And Wayne, you and I talked about, we'll do a little video one of these days and teach how you actually make this.
Yeah.
So others can learn how to make it themselves.
Happy to share.
Huh?
Happy to share that.
Yes, cool. Fertilizer tubes from the Saskatchewan farm boy.
Okay, so agriculture being a strong background for me, and in the first year using just the CO2, and we understand plants, CO2 is such a fundamental aspect of their existence, led to some interesting results, but one of them was that the root vegetables did not do well. And it was like they were starved of all the micronutrients, because in our experimentation, we did not add any supplemental nutrients. So we just said, let's see what the CO2 can do. And I realized that I needed to create something greater. So then I started adding in Wayne's concoction of so many different things that I understood from even being in the organic world, to give it full broad spectrum nutrition. And I turned that whole group into a plasmatic state, and we've been experimenting with that. Some really amazing experiences, a lot more to do. Plants doing and having behavior outside of their normal genetic capability. So that's an ongoing thing, but there's huge potential in the ability to use this, and it's just water there again that it's coming off the field from in these devices.
And so you actually used a tube inside of that white tube to have a second, to be able to set up a second field, and you actually have the GANs of the micronutrients that you made for the plants. You made the GANs out of them, and so you have that in a tube inside the outer tube, setting up a couple of fields there, right, for the water to flow through from the hose.
Correct. And so it's interesting that as fast as that water flows through the garden hose, it is changed. And that was one of my concerns. Could I influence it in that fast a rate of flow? But one thing in understanding the plasma is that the fields like to interact. So
Nice.
with me having an inner and an outer field, it facilitated that interaction as the water flowed through it.
Nice.
And that's just a little device I made, so you can just put it in a 5-gallon pail, and if you're just for your flowers or a small garden, there's enough that you can put on. And it's not like you have to have it on every day. This is some of the experimentation that I'm understanding, is that some of the plants, and every plant is different in how it responds, they don't like the plasma water until they're established a little bit older, maybe up 2 or 3 inches. It's just because it would be like adding too much nitrogen, for example, to a plant right off the bat. It gets that bolting nature to it, that quick growth, but it's not establishing that very solid fundamental stem and growth pattern.
So people can get these devices from you, and your website is plasmabalancingSystemsLLC.com. However, you're not into a huge amount of manufacturing, so we're hoping also people will get ideas of what they can do at home and make their own plasma devices, make their own GANs, make their own nano-coated copper, but also join you with Miracle on the weekly calls that you're doing, letting people participate remotely with that.
Yeah, and of course, without saying, we actually have the office where Miracle is there. And we're starting to get, for example, last week, an individual came from all the way across the US with the severe wheelchair-bound, severe MS handicap. And the changes that we are seeing in her is quite profound and it's ongoing. So we're looking forward to the results as that changes in her. And there again, because of her wanting to come and being wheelchair bound, I now have converted everything so we have wheelchair access.
Wayne, I just want to commend you for having heard these teachings and actually taken such great action. I have people message me all the time from around the world and say, how do I do this? How do I do that? And sometimes we just have to get out of our comfort zone and start taking the details of how to make these different things. And it is, you know, we're in a world where you can just buy anything you want, but and so it's important to start making these things ourselves as much as people can. And we want to encourage, inspire, and I want to thank you so much for what you've done, because you are an inspiration. You're inspiring me. I benefit from being with Miracle every week. I benefit from the tools that you've made. And I've gotten ideas about how I can make more better plasma tools. And so thank you for just being a person who has taken action, who's gone to these teachings and put things into form.
It's been my pleasure, and the journey just starting. We're working on some very unique substances and protocols that are going to be really, really interesting in the outcome, but that'll come up. And just one comment, Carrie, before we sign off. As I got into this, and of course, the well-being of people has never been my industry. I was a general contractor, a builder, and other areas. But I found so many people that have no hope in the current establishment to come to a resolve with a particular condition. And sometimes that's emotional, and a lot of times it's physical, but they say this has given them hope. And
Nice.
that's a nice evolution, I think, in what has to happen on this planet, that there are options out there in situations where people just don't want to follow the current regiment of treatments.
Very cool. Yes, many people are looking for new answers. And I think part of that is what I say in 21st Century Superhuman. All this light is coming into the planet. We're understanding more through quantum physics. We're getting inspired to wake up and take more responsibility for our lives, to bring love in, to bring healing, wholeness, wellness, joy in, and to change the world we live in by that.
The natural state of the way we're supposed to live.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, my friend. We have many more things we could be talking about. I'm sure we could go on for hours, and we'll do another show soon and have further conversations. So I want to remind everyone to breathe, smile, and center in love, center in your joy, center in your wholeness and your wellness. Thank you, Wayne.
My pleasure.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Bye, everyone.